What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Johnny Mack here. Just wanted to give you a heads up that if you are looking for a community that is open to discussion as far as mentorship, conservation, the wild, becoming a better person, and all of that, there is a group for you on Facebook, and it is called Soul Seekers. Soul Seekers, we are all about making ourselves a better person. We're all about making sure hunting lasts for generations to come and encouraging people to get plugged in. Whether you are someone who has something to give or someone who needs to soak it up like a sponge, this is a community for you, and I strongly encourage you that if you're on Facebook to join Soul Seekers, and if you're not on Facebook, hop on there just for that group. It is only going to be as powerful as we all make it. And so just remember that life happens for you, it doesn't happen to you, and that you can't outgive good. You can't outgive good, people. I want you to understand that, and I want you to believe it, because when we believe that and we lead with courage and we lead with intention, lives are changed, lives are transformed, just like on this podcast, transformation through primal adventure. Be blessed. Enjoy this episode. Talk soon. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Soulful Hunter Podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Mack. Through this podcast, I'm on a mission to transform lives through primal adventure and to spread my mission of mentorship as conservation. This podcast is powered by Washington Backcountry, a resource for all hunters, both new and old. To find out more about Washington Backcountry, go to wabackcountry.com or search for Washington Backcountry on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. The Soulful Hunter Podcast is also proudly presented by the Crazy Elk Company. Based out of the state of Washington with products made in America, they are providing solutions with gear to problems you didn't even know you had. Their tag wallet is one of those solutions, and I had the pleasure of using it on all of my hunts this last year, and it is now a mainstay in my kill kit. The tag wallet is a water-resistant zippered pouch that comes with its own reusable zip ties to safely and securely store your notch tag for quick and easy access. For more information, go to crazyelkcompany.com and use the code SOULFUL with a capital S to save 20% at checkout. Be blessed, everyone, and as always, stay soulful. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Soulful Hunter Podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Mack, and today I got just a wonderful episode with all of you who have been dying to know about what to do with taxidermy and what do you do with your animals after you shoot them and you want to bring them home and mount them and get them all done up. I got Rick Matthes of Cedar River Taxidermy, and he is just an awesome and wonderful, beautiful individual who has done quite a bit of work for me and someone who I've truly grown to love and call a friend, and that is Rick. Rick, thank you so much for coming on and recording an episode today.
You guys, you're sure welcome, Johnny. I really appreciate all you do for us, and just appreciate the kind words as well.
I love it. Well, it's well deserved. You definitely live out the kindness and everything that I like to preach on this podcast. You are a great representation of it. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Rick, give the listeners a little background on yourself. How did you even get into taxidermy, and what led you to where you are now?
Loved animals, loved art, flat art, whatever kind of art, didn't really matter. I did a little scrimshaw years ago, and which is done on ivory, for those that don't know. But just loved animals, and then kind of got into the 3D part of it, I guess, and bringing them back to life and doing it well.
I love it. So did you end up going to any taxidermy school, or was this something that you just ended up killing an animal one day and being like, I think I could do this myself? Or what was this process in which you trained yourself to be a full-time artist, which what taxidermy is? But is there any sort of process that led you to that?
Definitely artistic artist. And I started out just doing a few miscellaneous wild deer heads is basically what I started out on, just on my own, a kit from a supply company, and um, a lot of bumps and bruises, I guess, down on the road to learning it. Then I did go to Missoula Valley School of Taxidermy, um, quite a few years ago, 30, oh, almost 30, I guess. But um, and then kind of continued to do it on my just kind of part time, and then got into the got an opportunity to work for a shop out of North Bend, and went and worked for them for 10 years, and I've had my business for 14, I think. And uh,
That is quite impressive. I feel so. I grew up. This is way before I was a hunter, but I grew up with somebody who was kind of like kitty corner neighbors to me as a child, and he was a taxidermist, and he ran it out of his garage in his house, and his house was like this, museum of all these different animals. I always was just drawn towards staring at these animals, like going to the zoo, only you get a lot closer.
yeah,
Was taxidermy for you something that had a mystique to it, or was it just something that you're like, I'll give it a shot. We'll see what happens.
um, well, just the love for animals. And when I did my flat art, it was always wildlife, and um, didn't dabble in much else. But um, and to do it well is a real gift, I guess. And it's just a passion.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine it's got to be you got to absolutely love it to spend that much time doing it, and especially it's such a detailed work. A lot of people can put some paint on a piece of paper or canvas or whatever, and it's easy, but when you see an animal and you know what it looks like in real life and comparing it to that, there's gotta be a little bit of a pressure of being like, okay, I gotta make sure I earn my keep on this one. So
Yeah.
what through the years, because there's always this joke of like bad taxidermy. Were there any pieces that you ended up creating where you're like, whoa, this actually looks horrible?
Well, as you probably told you before, there's a deer there in my shop that was the second mount I ever did out of a kit, for my dad. And um, that one leaves an awful lot to be desired. But at the time, I thought it was pretty decent. But that was the second deer I ever did, and obviously not a lot of tutelage, and we just have advanced from there, I guess. And um, the school helped a lot, um, but you only learn one person's technique, but you also get a lot of other ideas, and you're always learning and always studying and
Yep.
picking things apart.
Absolutely. So I feel like taxidermy is a dying art. I feel like there's not that many taxidermists nowadays compared to when well, I mean, I'm speaking very rarely because have not always been a hunter, but I do remember I feel like there's taxidermist signs all over the place in Western Washington, and now it's a lot harder. I drive an hour and a half to get to you just to drop off my animals. Is it something that if people wanted to get into nowadays, it's more of an apprenticeship and going into a trade?
There are schools. It's hard. It's extremely difficult to make a living at it. Really. I hate to say that, but it is. And it's cost a lot of lot of relationships. A lot of my friends or people that I know that taxidermists have lost marriages and what have you, due to the amount of time that is required for keeping up with all this stuff is one thing. A dying art, it is. Um, Money into things, I think, factors into that a lot. Uh, there's not a tremendous amount of money in it in comparison to other trades nowadays. But just with all the amount of hours that you put into things, and um, so it's difficult. And I'm thankful for a very understanding wife and daughter back when she was young, and especially owning the business end of things. Over the last 14 years have been. It's not like you're go to work for 8 hours and have weekends off, and that all changes with the business. But
Yeah. Yeah, if you're not doing work, you're not making money. I totally get that.
yeah,
So, Rick, what are some of the common errors that people do out in the field? Or let me back up first real quick. As a taxidermist, how do you prefer to receive the animals in which people bring you? Whether it's a big game, antlered animal, or a bear hide, or whatever. What is common protocol and what is expected for delivery and drop off?
well, heat factors into this a whole bunch. If you were to take something early in the year, you got to do something with it really quick. Most people bring it in for me to skin the head out. So the skin is, um, you want to always leave your taxidermist a lot more skin than you think, and learn the proper cuts to make on it as well by contacting your taxidermist before you got your animal on the ground and figuring out what they want. I personally like to split them right down tell my clients to split them right down the back of the neck. And the other important place, and where a lot of people screw up, is in the armpits or in the brisket area. Um, you can make a cut clear around his circumference of the animal back behind the shoulders and stay out of the armpits. That is a tremendous amount of repair work that we end up having to do, armpits and briskets. But contact your taxidermist before you get your animal down and see how they want it. Like I said, most people bring them in with the cape on them, skin still on the head, and then really it's better for us to skin that head out usually. Um, if people do skin it out, it's there's a lot of material on it that doesn't really save us much time, but in some aspects it probably does. And if they know how to do it, that's great. And but the technical end of things, most people let us split the lips, the nostrils, the eyelids, turn the ears inside out, and then we salt. But
Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective. So when I brought you my elk, we actually skinned out the skull out of the hide first before I brought you the hide.
yeah,
Um, Now, you're saying a lot of times you actually prefer the head in, but really one of the things that caught me off guard, and I really appreciate, and I would love to hear you expand on this, is you said to contact your taxidermist before you go out hunting. So let's talk about that for a second. If someone is newer to hunting and they don't even understand this whole idea of taxidermy, how do they go about choosing a taxidermist, and what is the best way to go? Is it the closest one to where you shoot an animal, or is it word of mouth from friends, or what's your due diligence when picking out an artist?
the quality of the work, bottom line, they there's different views, I guess. People see things differently. Some people are just fine with amount, where I might look at it and think, boy, there's a lot of things wrong with it. But it's up to that person, that hunter.
Hmm.
Uh, it's just, I got a lot of clients that think an awful lot about my work, and it's just personal preference, I guess. I'm way behind right now, but I got a lot of people that tell me they don't care how long it takes, and, as long as it's done right. And it's just hard to. It's kind of a hard question to answer, really. I mean, it's. I just tell people to go look at the people's work, and if it's up to their standards, then great.
Hmm.
And, um,
Yeah, I guess putting you on the spot because you don't want to toot your own horn because you do amazing work, and it's such a you even have to turn people away because you are so busy with different things. What is some of the field care items in which people need to make sure they do in order to keep their keep their hides, animals, skulls in best shape for you? Is it folding skin to skin, fur to fur, skin to fur? Do you want them frozen? Do you want them thawed? What is the best way to bring you the animal and the hide so that you have the best ability to do work with it?
yeah. I mentioned earlier about temperature. If you're early in the year, you got to get it somewhere quick, or get the skin off the head and get that animal in the freezer. If you're close by and your taxidermist is available, just get it to them as quickly as possible. Um, but if it's 80, 90 degrees, whatever it can be in September, your time is limited, for that skin to be able to be any good in the end. I always tell, when it's hot too, I always tell people to get as much meat and stuff off the cape and the shoulders as they possibly can, because that meat is what is going to start to deteriorate first, and it starts to generate its own heat, and then you'll have hair slippage. It's going to go south on you in a hurry. Um, but as far as, if you got access to a freezer, great. And if you can get your animal in a freezer, that obviously is an issue with an elk. But unless you get the skin off the head like you did, and then you do have some freezer space probably. But um,
Yeah,
I think that answered most of your question. I think.
I love it. Yeah, it did. It did. What about waterfowl? And shooting a turkey or shooting pheasants or ducks or any of that? Do people just bring in the whole birds and like hand it over, or what's the process with that?
Yep. Usually, if a client wants like a turkey, if they want the breast out of it, I can get the breast out of it for them. Um, but yeah, usually people just bring in the whole bird. Now, I don't do my own birds, but I do take them in and send them to a guy in the Portland area that does them for me. I know how to do birds and fish, but I don't like the process of getting the finished bird. I love the finished bird, but I just don't like the process of getting there. It's just too time consuming. And um, fish, I just don't care to do either. But
Yeah. Yeah, because I didn't even think about that. Fish is a whole other ball game. What is a fish taxidermy product? Is it the actual skin of the fish, or is it just a replicate and you just are painting it to match it as best you can.
Anymore, most of it is replicas, but there's a lot that I mean, any most of them I'm sure can do your skin mounts as well, where you have to carve your own form typically, and um, it's not a lot different than mounting a mammal or bird, but um, as far as the skin, the taxidermy end of things, um, but most of them nowadays are replicas, I believe, and um, getting back to the birds and fish for that matter. I mean, you if you shoot something you want to mount, you need to put it in the freezer. And, maybe double, triple bag it and try to get all the air out of it so it doesn't freeze or burn in the freezer if it's in there very long.
Love it. Okay, that's good to know. What other tips of the trade would you recommend people doing or being patient? Maybe that's the other thing is taxidermy takes a long time to complete. So, is it how much money does a typical shoulder mount cost for a deer, an elk, a bear rug? Like, what are the prices in which you charge, or what is like industry standard typically for these types of products, so people know what to expect when they call up their taxidermist?
Now, my deer this year, which I'm really considering turning a fair amount of work away, but from non-previous clients, but mine are probably going to be in the 1,200 to 1,250 range. Um, Elk are typically around 2 grand nowadays. Forms have gone up. Shipping is ridiculous anymore. I mean, the cost to ship and taxidermists do a tremendous amount of shipping skins to the tannery, shipping the skins back from the tannery. The forms get shipped in. It's just that's kind of stuff adds up in a hurry, and especially nowadays. But um, bears are typically charged by the lineal foot, and um, which mine I think this year are probably about 360 for a rug anyway. If they're just tan only, I believe they're $160 or something like that, something close to that.
Okay, that's awesome.
That usually, with me anyway, that includes your skinning. Um, some taxidermists may charge less, but charge you for skinning as well. But um, so that's kind of where I'm at.
hmm I love it. Yeah, and you're not speaking for all taxidermists. You're speaking for how you do things and how you run your shop. Totally makes sense.
Yeah,
If somebody wants to get into taxidermy nowadays, what's the best place for them to start?
I would think probably going to a school would be the best probably. Which there aren't very many locally. To try to, I've taught several from scratch, but boy, and it's time consuming. If if I was to hire a taxidermist that went to a school, it's still going to take several years for that taxidermist to become efficient. Just from it just takes that much repetition of doing things to get efficient, and it's difficult.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, absolutely. Any time to hone a craft takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, energy, and there are bumps along the ways. I totally get that.
yeah.
Rick, I know you're definitely in this stage of your business in which you are actually turning some people away, but if people have questions or would love to follow up with you specifically about taxidermy questions, what's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
They can call me anytime. They can contact me on um, my email at Cedar River Taxidermy at Gmail, and they can also notify me on Facebook. Um,
Love
yeah,
it. And I'll make
well,
sure to have all those in the show notes as well for people to reach out to you as well.
sounds good. And you can look up the phone number, or I can give it to you, whatever. Um, but
I
I'm usually in the shop 7 days a week. You kind of know that probably, and I just uh, still can't keep up, and have been for 14 years, if you can imagine that. Um, and it's just a tough thing to keep up with.
Yes. Yes, I can imagine. Rick, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to record a podcast, talk about a little taxidermy. I'm sure that there are questions out there that people are starting to think about in regards to this coming season and what they're going to be doing. I highly recommend giving Rick a call for business. He has done my elk, my bear rug, just done some phenomenal work, and I highly recommend him. But Rick, more importantly, you're an awesome human being, and thank you for representing hunting and the hunting community so well. I really appreciate it.
Oh man, Johnny, well, thank you, and I feel the same about you, and I really appreciate that. And you know, I mean, just on a side note, we all should strive to make a difference, and um, you certainly have.
Thank you, my friend. I'm honored. Um, I do believe in creating a legacy and making this world the best you can, and be the change you want to see in the world. So thank you, my friend, and be blessed. Everybody, go check out Rick. Get a hold of him if you have questions. If not, feel free to DM me whatever questions you have, and we'll get you lined up as best we can. Rick, thank you so much for coming on this episode. Everyone, thanks for tuning in and listening. Be blessed, everybody, and as always, freedom on and stay soulful. If you enjoyed today's podcast, I'd love it if you could go ahead and give this a rating as well as subscribe. Also, you can check us out on Instagram under the Soulful Hunter Podcast. Make sure to tag us in pictures and posts and use the hashtag Soulful Hunter. To find out more about the Soulful Hunter Podcast, go to soulfulhunter.com and be sure to follow the podcast as we are going to be bringing you a lot of great information, insight, and changing lives through primal adventure. I look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. Stay tuned and stay soulful.